Hello everybody, my name is Ilya.
And my name is Tyler. Together we make up Kovray, a couple that loves to play board games.
And we love those crunchy ones that hurt your brain.
We do, and we've got another one today that we're going to talk to you about from Garphill Games called Ezra and Nehemiah. This one is published by Garphill Games, like I said. It's designed by Shem Phillips and Sam Macdonald, with the art also done by Sam Phillips.
Now this is a prototype copy, although it's pretty close to the final version, it may look slightly different. This game is also coming to Kickstarter, so if you want to learn more, feel free to hit that link down below. But today, we're lucky enough to take a look at the prototype and share some of our thoughts in this review video!
Hey.
Now before we jump into the overview, the point of Ezra and Nehemiah is to score the most points. And how you'll do this is by rebuilding the city of Jerusalem. Now you'll get majority of your points through rebuilding the walls and gates, rebuilding the temple, and teaching the Torah to returning exiles. Now the other ways you'll get points is also by exploring a little bit outside the city, utilizing your people in various ways, and making sure that altar keeps the fire burning.
With that out of the way, let's take a quick look at how the game works.
Let's do it. As always, you'll begin by setting up. You'll first prepare the main board according to your player count. You'll distribute the rubble around the board, set up the scroll tiles, place an altar card in the designated space, and 3 hero cards along with the gate cards off to the side of the board with a supply of resources, coins, and food. Each player will receive a player board with a random development tile of each type. On top of that, they'll receive 16 workers, of which 6 will start in the main supply. They also receive a tent, an altar marker, a victory point marker, 10 character cards and 12 wall cards, and finally 1 of each blessing markers. 1 worker from the main supply will be a starting Levite for each player. For resources, each player will start off with 5 silver, 3 food tokens, and the resources specified on the bottom left of the player's guard tile. You'll choose the first player and proceed to place workers as gatekeepers in reverse turn order. Once gates are chosen, you're now ready to play. Ezra and Nehemiah are played over 3 rounds or weeks. Each round is structured over 7 days. The first 6 days are for work, and the 7th day is for rest, where essentially the maintenance occurs. On your turn, you'll play one of the 4 cards in your hand. You can play in any of the 3 spaces, and each space may only have 2 cards max. So as the round progresses, you'll cover cards you've played before. After playing a character, you'll now play one of the 3 main actions. You'll use banners visible on your player board to complete that action. Red banners help you work on the temple and keep the altar burning. Gray banners are used for clearing rubble and constructing walls and gates. And blue banners are for teaching the Torah and traveling to those camped in tents around the city. Let's look at the temple and altar main action. In the altar space, you'll first be able to place Levites by paying food to increase the amount of actions you can take in the altar and temple, or to help increase your red banners. Building your temple will grant you victory points, along with various resources, additional workers, or movement in the map of the city. Each time a sector is filled, bonuses will be granted as well. You're also able to place resources on the altar to keep it burning. Wood requires 3 red banners, while cinder requires 1. Both of these grant movement on the altar track. Altar track grants you rewards for each space you move onto, and at the end of the round will grant you additional bonuses or detriments depending on your placement. Now let's look at the rubble, walls, and gates. You'll first choose only 1 space to focus on for that turn. To clear rubble, you'll simply need the corresponding gray banners. Once cleared, you'll gain the corresponding blessing bonus and the rubble. Cleared spaces are then eligible to be built on. You can build walls or gates by paying the required resources. These will grant you an immediate reward and points for the end of the game. Anytime you connect a wall to a gate or a gate to a wall, a connection bonus on top of that will be gained. This applies to both the owner of the wall and the gate. Now next is the Torah and tenting around the city action. You'll teach the Torah by placing your work on the scroll tile. You'll pay the cost on the left and silver to any scribes that are not your own to get to the space. Your worker will remain in the space from then on. At the end of the game, you'll score points for each scribe based on the row they're in, and sometimes the scribes they occupy. You can also tent around the city. You need a certain amount of blue banners and sometimes a resource to move 1 to 4 spaces. For each move, you'll gain the corresponding bonus. Now those are the 3 main actions. In addition to the main action, you can also choose to take 1 single auxiliary action. This may be performed at any point during your turn. You can use the trait ability of the character card you played this turn, or turn over a development tile by paying the indicated cost. This in turn strengthens your player board and provides victory points for the end of the game. Now, in addition to the main action and the potential auxiliary action, you can also choose one trade and or one elder to place. Traders provide immediate resources, silver, or food, while elders provide players with additional banners and sometimes resources if upgraded. Now, once you've done that, you'll redraw your hand back up to 4 cards. You'll keep playing until everyone has had taken 6 turns, and now it's time for Sabbath. You'll first assign farmers and laborers if you have any workers left over. You'll then resolve the prophet's judgment. Following that, you'll have to feed every one of your workers, with the exception of Levites. For any worker you're not able to feed, you'll lose 2 victory points. You'll then choose one of the 6 cards you've played and tuck it on your player board. You'll then score this card and any cards already there, and prepare for the next round. In the second round, you'll tuck 2 cards, and in the last round, you'll tuck 1. At the end of the third round, once you finish this phase, you'll begin final scoring. You'll first convert all your resources to silver, score 1 point for every 5 silver, 2 points for every development tile you flipped, 3 points if you're the altar leader, victory points on walls and gates, victory points from scribes, and finally victory points for the scrolls in the top row based on their unique scoring condition. You'll compare the scores and the player with the most points wins. Now, will you be able to collect all those points and win?
I know. I'll try. I sure might try.
Tyler beat me in a tiebreaker.
Yeah, that felt really good. But you won the first time we played.
I did win the first time we played.
Yeah.
That was nice.
But what did you think of Ezra and Nehemiah?
I loved it. I think I've said this with every Garphill game that we cover and that we do. I think they keep getting better.
Yeah.
And the complexity just flows so smoothly in this game. Initially you open it and you are overwhelmed. Not only is the box like filled to the very top, as they always are, but the rulebook is a hefty amount of pages.
Yeah.
As you read, there's a lot of information. But as you learn the game, everything just connects so smoothly. And I found this one unlike any other. It was fantastic to learn. It was great to play. And I want to play it again and again.
I mean, it definitely has elements from other games that we're familiar with from Garphill that they pull in and like wrap into Ezra and Nehemiah. But it has been a lot of fun to play, a lot of fun to explore the different strategies. And there's a lot of pieces, well, particularly from Paladins, that I really like connected the dots with and thought was exciting to see.
Well, that's exciting. Now, let's jump into it. What are some of the reasons you think people will enjoy this game?
I'm going to start with talking about your own player deck. So basically, like, as you have already learned, is you'll draw cards and you'll have them in your hand, and then you'll play them, but then you also have to put them into your scoring zone. So there's a lot going on with just your player deck, and it's like a multi-use channel. So you'll be able to play your cards to do specific actions and plan ahead in that particular way, but then you also are able to use their abilities that they have, and then later on you actually have to strategically think about like which ones are you going to get rid of to help you score points right now because maybe you're really ahead in that particular scoring opportunity, or even just so you can have that extra banner to use later on in your next rounds. I think that's really fun.
And it's so funny too because typically the scoring opportunities that you would want to use, the ones you've been advancing the most, by taking them, you're taking away banners for the next turns.
Yes.
So even though you're adding 1, you're taking away that potential 3 banner. So that balance of the decision making is so intricate and so interesting. And so many times I've had games where I was 1 banner away from doing an action, and there's almost nothing you can do to make up for that banner.
Yeah,
unless you use up that worker. Yeah,
Yep.
if you use up that worker, it's you can't do it.
Yep.
So I think balancing all that is so interesting. And it's something I personally really love in games, of like having the ability to balance like which card am I going to play. It makes sense to play this because of the banners, but I really want this trade ability. So weighing that in every turn is really fun.
Yeah. And then it comes down to even placing over top of one of the cards that you already have on your board. You're only allowed to have 2 in each pile, but even then, like when you've got 3 down and you have to decide which one to cover, hopefully you've been planning ahead so you can work towards that. But at certain times there's like, ooh, I could take the gray banner action, I could take the red banner action, but I have to place it here versus here, and what do I end up wanting to do next turn? It's a lot of fun to be able to like mix and mingle almost those strategies to really push yourself forward, and that's one of the biggest reasons I think you'd like to check out Ezra and Nehemiah.
Now, if you also enjoy complex games, this is a complex game.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot in this game. It's an involved rule book. There's an involved rule set. But what I will say is that it flows together really smoothly.
Yeah.
Now, in essence, you play a character, you take one of the 3 actions, and then you follow through those actions. And then you do that 6 times. There's obviously complexities and intricacies with various of those actions and Sabbath phase and just in general. But the way that it flows, like once we've played it a couple of times, it was so easy to jump back into. We barely referenced the rule book.
Yeah.
It felt really intuitive, and the board really helped as well with the various iconography and graphic design.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a lot once you set it up, but like Ilya said, is once you get going, you'll still have those complex decisions to make while you're playing the game, but the actions themselves and the way that once you've decided what you're going to do, the way that you proceed with that, really, really smooth, feels really good, and there's a lot of like tactile and visual references that allow you to know you're doing the right actions, you're not missing something, things like that.
And another thing I'll say is the element of planning ahead. This is another one of those games where if you love planning ahead and trying to connect all the dots and making a perfect strategy work out, this is going to be your piece of cake. This is like the grand dessert you've been waiting for. Because a lot of this game is making sure that you have enough resources, enough actions, enough banners, enough planning that you can do what you want to do at the very end to score yourself the most points.
Yeah, there is a lot of information that you have for yourself and other players around you that you're able to almost utilize, but more importantly, because you go through your whole deck, you do have that opportunity to almost, plan ahead, decide where you want to go, utilize and optimize certain scoring opportunities, things like that. So if those are really like check marks on games when you're looking to play, this one, highly recommend.
To give you a little bit of insight, this is how my brain works when playing this game. For example, I think of my end goal of like wanting that top piece of the temple. But hey, it requires 2 gold. I have no gold. How can you get gold? Well, there's 3 different ways you can get gold. If I go here this turn, I can get 1 gold. But I can also take advantage of this thing to get another gold this on a later turn. So you almost kind of have your when thinking about this game, have my like end objective.
Oh yeah.
And then I think backwards and see how many turns, and if I'm able to do those with the banners, with the resources, with all the things that I have to do those things.
Yeah, there's definitely like a good strategy tip is like pick something and work backwards from it. But that actually kind of leads into things we can talk about why you might not want to check this out. And the reason I say that is because you're able to plan ahead and there's other players working around you, you do have to be very adaptable in your strategy. Every game, although it feels the same, honestly, depending on the first 4 cards you draw, can make or shape your strategy completely. And that's really interesting to see. And even then, maybe you're a few cards in, you might have to swap completely. Maybe somebody is more heavily leaning into the resources that you might need for a certain thing, or they're taking up spaces, they've written the scrolls that you want to write. Those types of things are really interesting to have to like adapt on, while also still being able to plan ahead and hopefully not like break your strategy, which I find very, very tug and pull. And if you're not super invested in games where you have to adapt, then this one might be a little too much.
This definitely is a game where every player's turn matters significantly to your own strategy.
Yes.
Everything everybody does will affect you one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's taking the resources you want or taking that second last spot because you want to get that last spot in the altar to get additional food, or how far you are at different tracks, if you're ahead in these different ways. Everything everybody else does has an impact on you, which I love because it's not necessarily a negative player interaction where you're always blocking people, because at the end of the day, you're doing what's best for you.
Yep.
But in turn, that could really shape up somebody else's strategy because you deterred them from doing something that they really wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then even to that, because there's like a tight resource management that's going on, not just with food, coins, but there's also tight resource management with the banners and being able to take specific actions. So if you can't get to 5, for example, on the blue banners, you're not able to get to a certain spot on those on that scroll area, and that can be kind of deterring And you'll have to decide where else you can go. Same thing can be said with the red banners and the gray banners and those actions that are associated with it. So it's interesting to see, again, those decisions that you have to make. But my point being is that it is a tight resource management game. So if those are games you lean away from, probably might not want to check Ezra and Nehemiah out.
I think the last thing I'll mention here too is if you don't enjoy that planning ahead, which I think goes opposite of kind of that earlier point.
Yeah.
Like this is a game where you really have to plan what you're going to do a few moves ahead. Now, you certainly can show up on your turn and do the best that you can, but you will not do as well as if you had a plan all along or if you're building up to something. Because the points can definitely vary in this game. You can score really close scores where you tie, but there can be a really large point division based on what you do.
Yeah, and then I think my last point to the whole game is that this is a time commitment. It's a 2-hour game, so if it's your first time playing it, expect to be there for at least 2.5 hours, I would say. It's definitely one that takes a bit to get into, but once you're into it, like we've already said, it is pretty smooth sailing. And yeah, that brings us to overall, what do we think?
I really enjoyed this game. I want to play it again. I want to play it more. It definitely is at the top tier of the Garphill games for me. I don't know where quite it lives yet because we've only played it a few times. We haven't played it in the tens of some of the other games. But I'm really curious to see where it ends up because so far it definitely has been a huge hit.
Yeah, I agree. This game is very smooth. Like I said, or like you said, Garphill Games continues to get better and better at this, and I get really excited every time they announce a new game. Waiting for Paladins to get knocked off its high horse, essentially, for me.
And what Tyler means by that is Paladins is his favorite game.
Yes.
If you don't know.
Yeah.
So
waiting for that to happen, but I'm really excited because every time they come up with a new game, there's like different nodes of all their other games kind of put into this. And then the other thing too is the art gets better and better. I think Sam Phillips is dialing in on his style, and I really, really love to see that. So that just elevates the game a little bit more for me. But overall, fun game. It takes a while to play, a little bit to ease into, and I will say my opinion on it is that it plays better at higher player counts.
You didn't like 2-player?
I didn't mind 2-player, but I definitely preferred it at a higher player count.
Yeah. We managed to play it 2 and 3. We have not played it 4 yet.
But 3 was better than 2 in my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you even wanted 2.
Yeah.
Okay, well, last question before we hit us with the question of the day is, now we've talked about kind of the broader sense of what we thought, but how do you think it compares in the Anthology series? This is the 4th game in the Anthology series. The other games are Hadrian's Wall, Raiders of Scythia, Legacy of You, and now Ezra and Nehemiah. Now, if you were to compare those 4 games, where do you think this one lands? And they're all very different games.
Yeah, I will preface this with the fact that they are such different games. We've got a roll and write, a solo, a worker placement, and then like a lot more. There's a lot more in this. I think that in terms of this one, I think you still need to play it a little bit more because Hadrian's Wall is like up there for me. But I think it would fall like somewhere probably in the middle, 2 or 3 for me out of the 4. So yeah. How about you?
You're not going to say what the...
Oh, Hadrian's Wall would be my favorite. It would be a toss-up between Ezra and Nehemiah and Raiders of Scythia, and then Legacy would be at 4. I'm not much of a solo gamer, so that's probably why. And yeah, I just haven't played enough of Ezra to know where it lands between that and Raiders.
I think for me it's very similar, but instead of Ezra and Raiders, I think it's actually Ezra and Hadrian's Wall. So Hadrian's Wall is still my favorite. I think that solo campaign is just fantastic, but I can see over time this one overtaking it.
This one does have a solo mode too, so it'd be interesting to see how that one plays.
I've not tried it solo.
Yeah.
But I am curious. I think it's also because I've played so much of Hadrian's Wall that I feel like I've uncovered every little crevice of that game as I could, where there's still a lot of discovery in this one in terms of strategy.
That's fair.
Now for our question of the day, what is the longest amount of time you've spent playing a board game? Just one.
A single board game.
Is it Twilight Imperium, perhaps?
I was just going to say
if it's not, or if it is, tell us about your experience with that day. What happened? What was your highlight? Did you have snacks? Was everyone just sweating by the end of it? Like, what was the setting and the story?
That's fair. I think back to most recently we were playing Hegemony, and we weren't able to finish the game because we ran out of time. I think it does because it was a statement to us learning the game, and with a limited. I think we had like 3 hours.
Like 3 hours.
And we did the teach, tried to play the game. It took 3 hours, and I think we got a little over halfway.
Yeah.
And
is that the longest we've played a game? 3 hours?
One full sitting. I would think so. I think so. I'm not sure though.
Maybe
that's my most recent
one would maybe come to mind.
Yeah, on Mars was tough.
But I don't remember us like being like, hey, we've been here 4 hours.
4 hours later.
So yeah, tell us about your experience.
Down in the comments below.
And if you enjoyed our video,
give us that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, because we make weekly board game content where we talk about games like this and so much more.
And in 2 weeks, we'll be doing Polyomino-vember, where we look at polyominoes all of November.
Gear up and get ready to stack.
You don't always stack polyominoes.
Oh.
Exactly.
Bye.